Hey there. Well, I backed away a bit and turned the lights down because I noticed some prisms shining their light. So here's my oldest journal waiting to be recorded, and it's from 728, so I'm pretty close to caught up. And this is the first one of that day. The Mayan day was one Jaguar. And so that's the beginning of a tracina. And the Jaguar energy will mark the whole tracina. It's kind of the point of the energy for that 2-week period. Well, 13 days. Okay. I feel pretty darn good today. How about you? We're in a break from the solar activity, a break that won't last too long. There's an incoming storm due to arrive tomorrow or the next day, so be in heart for it. Observe yourself, watch, and see if you're sensitive to the change. With as little as the body's 5 sense mechanisms allow us to penetrate of known reality here in 3D, it's amazing we're doing as well as we are. When you think you're beaten down and just trampled upon, think again. Take another look. Give yourself credit for all that you're plowing through. This is not an easy ride, not at all. Chances are you're doing fine. Maybe you could just use a break, some gentleness at your own hand. Some may wonder how it is that I can be this impossibly upbeat about everything. It isn't human, right? Well, no, it isn't. And we're not human either, remember? We're divine. It was while we were stuck in believing that we were just human that we had, or we made such a hard time of it. We quite underestimated our resources and our support. So I hope many of us are choosing another way to be these days, just to help you survive. By just standing in heart and returning to that posture again and again, we link up with higher self and with source and allow that to flow through. As you begin to notice the flow, the heart flow, dancing you, you can know that your walk with heart is true. Just like the synchronicities, you're being danced. More or less watching what's happening with you, but not really doing anything. Yet you watch it being done. Now, we've got to remember who and what we are, my friends. That's what we're about here. That's what we're called on to do. And in that remembering, we're putting back together our dismembered self, becoming whole once again. It's been a long time since we knew the feel of that, but it's so close now, we can almost taste it. We're going home, capital H, home in consciousness, wherever we are, returning to light. Are you ready? How involved, how deeply involved are you with 3D? Do you find your interest totally taken up with it? Or do you find yourself somehow backing away? Well, what are you backing away from? Just notice now, don't judge. Let's keep remembering how all judgment is a thing of the past. It's what the Illuminati taught us to do, to keep us forever apart from both our inner core and each other. Now is a great time to jettison that, to firmly just let it go. Now, it doesn't really go all that easily though, does it? It turns out that this judgment thing is deeply woven into the ego, into our mind. It's just how we work. Again and again, people in mind will defend their right to judge, the righteousness of that. Well, That's fine. It just means they're not yet ready to let go. That's all. So we let them alone. When they're ready, they'll come around. And meanwhile, maybe you've planted a seed by just being you. This whole detachment from thinking, we have to reach out. Detachment from thinking we have to reach out and somehow save the world. Detachment from that is really good. It burdened us with a terrible anxiety for which there was no remedy. And it took us well beyond that for which any one of us is responsible. It was just nonsense. But being in mind, we took it seriously. We just didn't know. So, like good little troopers, we were up for it. Friends, your hearts are so pure, so mighty and beautiful. It's amazing. No matter what burden was laid on you, still, you bucked up under the load. Somehow, you carried it. Well, that's beautiful evidence of the power of the Spirit, the inner being there. But that's no longer necessary. It's one more burden you can let go. Each one is responsible for the self. That is all. And be with that for a moment. To many it'll seem backwards, but consider, maybe that's due to your programming. So just give this a chance. Sit in heart with it. You responsible for only you. See what comes up. The key that will put this together, will make it make sense, was always kept from us. And it has to do with just who and what you really are. Who we are. We were fed every lie. We were told we were the opposite of who we really are. We weren't often told we were divine, though it may have been tucked in here and there. We even find it in the Bible and in some other scriptures, but still there are ministers who will interpret this any way but that. So it's a boatload, a huge boatload of lies and distortions of truth we have to step out from under. A lot of belief garden work is here before us to weed out the untruths. Now here's the beauty of it. Each one of those untruths cast yet another burden on us. Each one weighed us down. Perhaps that was their purpose, could be. It doesn't matter though. We can do this without judgment of any kind. We can just cast out the lies. The beauty is in the new lightness you'll find in your step. You'll feel as if you've lost some weight or something. In this lifetime, we haven't yet known what it's like to be burden-free. Well, those who haven't experienced a deep NDE, or near-death experience, those folks found out, most of them. I want us to be unburdened, just like that. It's our natural state, so we're just throwing off mostly the shoulds, the ought-tos that others have convinced us to take on. Now, just how many shoulds are you carrying around? Can you feel their weight? Get rid of that word. Can you imagine what real freedom is like? We're so beautiful, my friends, constantly trying to keep going under this weight. And some of us have given up. They either found it too much to bear, or they realize that saving someone or something else just isn't possible. And it's not. Everyone has to save themselves. That's not how it's done, rescuing others. That's to interfere in someone else's journey, not your own. They're responsible for that, not you. You can let that go. By simply shining your full radiance, just being, you help them quite enough. The blessings are there for them. If they want help, they'll ask. It's more important that they get that help from their own inner self. So just shine soon, so soon. You'll see how that's enough. Things are healed and repaired from micro to macro. We take care of what's right in front of us first, the little things, or they'll trip us up. As we tend to that, the big things will be found to take care of themselves. And being hard to hear that, I know it makes no sense to mind. When I say that things will take care of themselves, I mean it will happen in the flow. It may appear to others that you are doing this or that, but you'll know otherwise. It just isn't so. That's all a seeming. Moving on. The biggest lies we were told concerned who and what we are. They took us off course. By keeping it so thoroughly hidden from us that we are actually divine. We were made to be creators in harness, doing our creating at the behest of another, of the powers that were. And that's how we came up with the mess of this current world. Now, do consider how very wise they consider themselves, the powers that were. They can blame every bit of this mess on us. And on the surface of things, that looks correct. But it's not. It's actually the powers that were behind the scenes that harnessed our creative energies to their plow. We were plowing their rows, not our own, and we just didn't know. They also taught us that going within, working wonders, being psychic or telepathic was all not just nonsense, but even dangerous. They did their best to frighten us away from anything that remotely connected us back up with who and what we really are. They taught us that to say we're divine is blasphemy, punishable by death in some ages, or with an eternity in hell. Now, just look at that load of crap. That's what it is. We are truly creators, and they knew they couldn't take that away from us. So instead, they worked to so diminish our sense of self that we'd willingly pull their plow and help them grow their crops, fatten their pockets at the expense of ours. Now, I don't share all of this to make you angry or resentful, so if you're there, know that you're in mind and get back to heart. Really, if that sort of energy comes up, just be sure to observe it. Just watch it, quietly watch, and you'll be shown its origin. Enough of this quiet watching, and you'll soon be through with such energies. They won't find a suitable home in you anymore, nowhere they can stick. You're too self-aware. They need sheeple and sleeple, not you. By doing all that we can to stay centered within, we're in the best shape to see through all such stuff. It even gets humorous beyond a certain point. You'll find yourself laughing at something that may have given you frustrating fits before. Things just shift when you're no longer willing to be used. It's also called taking our power back, and it's really not that difficult. It's kind of fun. Now, especially here in the USA, people really do have a mighty spirit within. it was represented in our founding, all the bright rights and connection with Source that our founding documents enshrined. While that's still there within us, it's pretty well hidden under this weight and load that we bear. So don't be surprised to find yourself somehow getting younger in your attitude and your bearing as you shift this load off. Light beings all around the globe have this same mighty spirit within. At night, on the inner planes, many of us are getting together for this work of the heart, of the one, waking up. We won't necessarily remember these adventures on awaking. I seldom do. Yet they take place, of that you can be assured. As we stick with heart, we'll find not only our days, but also our nights shaping up. You may even find yourself in lucid dreams. If you'll set the intent to just raise your hand in front of your face in a dream, you can become lucid. Then, when you do, just stick with heart and go for it, whatever comes up. You'll be tackling your fears and dumping your burdens even in your dreams, and you'll gain night mastery too. What we are is being rolled out faster and faster for us to see. I know I get a bit behind, or I feel that way at times. It's all gotten pretty intense as related to time. Let's just stay ever open, my friends. Don't lock yourself into some little image of who or what you are. Just don't go there. Just know that you don't know, and let that be enough. This is to keep the cup ever empty, which encourages light to flow, teaching to come in, understanding to grow. We're all being taught from within. Well, let's hook up with that. Let's participate more consciously. That's ever my prayer. My call is always to merge consciously with my own inner self. I surrender all to that. It's my main goal right now. But I've got to truly say I don't know who and what I am. It's too vast for these 3D biological beings to contain, my friends. We're so beyond this whole scene that it would blow the body's fuses to have this awareness come all the way in. Okay, let's also cease fighting our not knowing. Let's just make peace with that. Can you wrap your arms around it? You can do this, but do you want to? What are you getting out of that fight? Ever in each moment, let us welcome and accept that which is. It's a whole new attitude for about 99% of us. Whatever is before us, let us respond from heart. Now, that response will surprise us often enough. We have much more in us that we have no clue of. And if we give heart the lead like this, such wonders can come to the fore. This is not to limit the self, to welcome the now. You see, in fighting against your not knowing much about the self, you're off in la-la land somewhere. Why? Because what you're fighting isn't even real. You do know far more of the self than your conscious mind can possibly contain. You just know it in other areas, other aspects or dimensions of self. Much is subconscious and unconscious too. And of course, there's the superconscious or the higher self. So you do have this knowledge, just not in the way that you can get to it consciously. yet. We will soon enough. We forget we're playing parts in the grand drama and that we've collaborated on the script. It doesn't look that way in the play out. There is so very much of the self not accessible to the outer awareness. That means to the mind. Big deal. Well, it is accessible, just in other ways, through other avenues, such as heart. You just gotta divorce the mind for a bit, you know? So, what does our fighting against not knowing do? It keeps our not knowing in place. Yeah, it locks it in. It cements it. There we are, Don Quixote, tilting at windmills, playing with unreality. And we get to do that for as long as we choose. So, this is your clarion call, my friends. Come in from the cold. Let all of that fighting, that resistance to the present moment and its reality, let it go. Just drop all resistance to now. Welcome it. Determined to welcome what comes, no matter what. Then sit back and just watch your life change for the better in so many ways. At first and at times, it may seem hard or even impossible. Yet once we learn that that's just our programming speaking, well, we take another view. You are so deeply, so divinely loved that it would take your breath away if you knew even a millionth of it. If you felt that love, you'd just melt right there. You'd be thoroughly changed by that. Of course, your body would probably die, but you know. Well, that's something you can have while you're still here in 3D. It's found on the heart path, and as I've often said, you can touch bases with that by listening to others share their NDEs. You are that love that's unconditional. You have no limits at all, and you're perfect too. It's really going to rock when we all find this out. We think we're these imperfect little screw-ups down here, and it's so not so. Much of our confusion arises from a faulty self-definition. Have you noticed that? When you do, it's a real empowerment. It opens many doors that were previously shut tight. By restricting our self-definition to conscious mind, we lock ourselves down in a prison that represents. And yet, we've got the key, always. We can go free. Like so very much else, and we didn't know it, it's a choice. You do have free will. If others believe that they don't, then let them believe that. They're just locking themselves in, but you don't have to join them in jail. Your freedom will do more for them than your companionship in their self. Fly free, beautiful bird of spirit. Shake off the weights. Take great joy in each step up the ascending spiral of light. Follow your bliss. Refuse to be burdened. And think for yourself. Don't worship science or any teacher or guru at all. No one has a monopoly on truth. Get that. Go within. It's time to rule in your own kingdom of heart, to allow the divine self to finally come out and play. And it will. Just make happy. You'll see. Namaste.